Hi, this is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we critically examine the strategic issues that bedevil Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer simple, practical, but audacious ideas on building the Nigeria of our collective desires. On today's episode of the program, I have a guest with whom we shall be reviewing the state of our dear nation, Nigeria. But before that, here's my take on what I've titled the presidential jets purchase. There are news that the presidency is planning to purchase 2 brand new aircraft for the use of the president and vice president. The justification for this, the justification being that the existing airplanes in the presidential fleet are unserviceable and therefore constitute a risk to the lives of the first and second citizens. I do not intend to get into some inane arguments about who performed the technical audit of the current fleet to ascertain their airworthiness, or even about whether it is the right time to make this purchase. My take centers on one question, and one question alone. What does Nigeria need a presidential fleet for? Now, why is this question germane? As I speak here, there are 18 million out-of-school children, and these have since become the ready foot soldiers for terrorists, bandits, kidnappers, armed robbers, etc. Also, I shall not bore you with the fact that I shall not bore you with the reality of the chronic hunger in our land, with child malnutrition at war levels, or medicines and basic prescription drugs prices astronomical and beyond affordability, or the high unemployment rates, the parlor state of our public education and healthcare sectors, poor electricity and roads infrastructure, or that multinationals are exiting our shores in droves, that the minimum wage crisis remains unresolved with the threat of a general strike looming large, and that Nigerians are being killed daily through rampant insecurity. Saddening as these are, it pales in comparison to the state of our nation's fiscal health. From a Punch newspaper report editorial of June 11th, 2024, after President Olusegun Obasanjo's intervention got our national debt down from $28 billion in 1999 to $2.1 billion in 2007, President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua increased this marginally to $3.5 billion foreign and 5.6 trillion naira domestic debt. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan took this to $7.5 billion foreign and 8.8 trillion naira domestic debt. This ballooned, however, astronomically under President Muhammadu Buhari to $37.2 billion foreign and 44.91 trillion naira domestic in just 8 years of his government. Yet, the National Assembly has since approved for the current government, current government's borrowing plan of $7.8 billion and 100 million euros under its medium-term expenditure framework to finance the 2024 fiscal bill. Still, we're desperate to borrow more if able to find willing lenders. Now, as if the foregoing grim statistics aren't ominous enough, Nigeria currently spends 98% of our revenues on debt service. Our federal government's chief technical advisor, the World Bank, recently advised we may soon be spending 100% of our revenues on debt service. Also, the Debt Management Office stated a few days back that our total public debt as at March 2024 now stands at 121.67 trillion naira, or $91.46 billion. This being 50% of our current gross domestic product. I know government economists and apologists will argue that our debt to GDP ratio is pretty low. But how about our debt to revenue ratio? For context, Japan has a debt to GDP ratio of over 263%. But 43% of this is held by the Japanese central bank. And critically, Japan pays $0 in debt service. Also, Japan has $1.16 trillion in foreign reserves, the second highest after China What does this mean? Japan has a cash reserve of 1.16 trillion US dollars in reserve. In contrast, Nigeria has a reserve of less than 35 billion US dollars, or even much less. If you factor in the collateralized loans we've taken from the Afrexim Bank, the future sales, forward sales, and all of that, I'm sure we have pretty lower than 35 billion US dollars in reserves. And also, as I had earlier mentioned, we spend almost 100% of our revenues on debt service. So it is in the midst of all this socioeconomic maelstrom that the federal government under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is allegedly thinking of procuring 2 brand new aircraft as a top expenditure priority. I dare say that even if these aircraft are offered to us as gifts, a responsible government with a proper perspective on leadership will either decline or request that this be monetized and the proceeds used to reduce our unsustainable debt overhang. And so, as I conclude, my firm belief is that Nigeria does not need and definitely can ill afford a presidential air fleet. Yet, this federal government, as was the case with the one before it, has shown a visceral disdain for informed and patriotic counsel. But history will judge in the fullness of time. And that's my take. I'll take this short break, and when I return, I'll sit down with my guests and get into the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. My guest today is former Minister Barrister Solomon Dalung at a one-time local government chairman, Langtang local government, Jos Plateau State. Also an academic. He was a lecturer at the University of Jos, a lecturer of law. Not many people know that about him. Under President Muhammad Buhari, was Minister for Youth and Sports, 2015-2019. Comrade Minister, good afternoon, sir.
Well, thank you very much for what you are doing for Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Nice to have you again.
It's my pleasure.
It's been a while.
Well, we're trying to make ends meet.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Comrade, let's get right into our conversation. Last time you and I were here, we focused essentially on goings-on on the plateau, especially relating to the issue of insecurity, killings. And so what's the situation currently?
Well, the situation has not changed. It's still just that of the graveyard piece because it's over and on. Currently, about last week, we had an attack in one of our villages where about 40 people were killed. And then we have this protest arising from the implementation of Executive Order number 3 of the Plateau State Government, which is intended to transform the metropolis. The executive order is well intended. It has successfully been implemented in other parts of the metropolis, but it got to a point and there was a mismanagement of the communication protocol, and it resulted into a violent reactions where lives were lost, vehicles were burned, properties were destroyed. Even a threat to the life of the governor was issued by the leader of the protesters. And so I think for us on the plateau, we've not been able to tackle the roots of our challenges. We're still scratching it on the surface. And so it's becoming now like part and parcel of us.
Comrade, if you say this, people will feel a bit worried, because so much money has been spent by the previous government, the one you served under, and by this current government. So much, we just hear billions and billions of naira being budgeted for defense and security. So what exactly, comrade, can you tell us what measures have both the federal and the state governments, what have they done to, nip these incessant killings on the plateau, to nip it in the bud? What exactly?
Well, obviously, they have not differed from their Mango Park strategy of dealing with...
Mango Park, you said?
Yes, Mango Park strategy.
How do you mean?
Yeah, Mango Park strategy is their old ways of doing things and expecting different results. The federal government has not demonstrated sufficient willpower to deal with security challenges in Nigeria and even in Plateau State, where these things initially originated in 2001 to 2005 and had remained with us. The federal government, through the Office of the National Security Advisor, in rolling out their scorecard for 1 year in office, assured Nigerians that the security situation had improved considerably and our roads were safe. This misled a Deputy Vice Chancellor of Usman Danfodio University to take to the roads. And on his way from Sokoto to Kaduna, he was killed by bandits. Now, this is evidence that our roads are not safe. And then you have the current attacks in Katsina, where the bandits were on rampage, killing of police and sacking of villages. In Plateau, like I said, just last week, there was also an attack in Company's Rock, southern part of the Plateau, by bandits. And I mean, this is a zone that relatively is unknown to banditry. But we are now recording the emergence of banditry. So when you sum up this together, you ask the question, this huge budgetary investment in defense and security goes to what? In my candid opinion, I think the federal government had not demonstrated that political will, because Obasanjo had to establish in this country that it's possible to deal with insecurity within 1 week, depending on the scale. Because when Boko Haram relocated from Borno to Mandara Mountains in Yobe and annexed 2 local governments, President Obasanjo, in 2 days, rolled out troops, flushed them out, repossessed the local governments, and maintain stability there. You take a look at what President Musa Yar'Adua, may God forgive him and give him rightful place in heaven, amen. The step he took to deal with Boko Haram in 2009. That was even a civilian. He was on his way to Japan when they told him Boko Haram had attacked 5 police stations, and he rolled out a presidential order that nipped it in the bud. Since then, we have not seen such demonstration of political will by government. So what happens to this huge budgetary allocation?
That brings me to, I mean, your response dovetails into my next question, which is, how do you do a general, what's your general assessment? Because the president and your state governor, some of the governors, including your state governor, Caleb Mutfwang, just celebrated 1 year in office, May 29th. How do you assess them generally? How do you assess their performance?
Well, let me begin with my state before I come to the center. For the governor in Plateau, he has been able to, within 1 year, drafted the performance of the APC in ADS. He has also...
In 1 year?
In 1 year. Because...
But you just told us there was a crisis.
Yeah, we are talking about performance. We'll get to this thing.
Okay.
You see, the governor in 1 year had been able to embark on massive transformation of the road networks within the Jos metropolis. Some of these roads were unattended to for over 20 years. He had constructed them. In fact, the road in front of my house in Jos was abandoned for 20 years. When I was a minister, I kept appealing to the APC government in the state. It even ignored. But this present governor had constructed that roads and other roads. He has also embarked on mass transit, metropolitan mass transit system, where he acquired buses that run within the metropolis. You have even interstate. So there is an improvement.
But there's always been Plateau riders, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Plateau riders at a point in time was syndicated to private operators because there were no government fleets again. But the governor has repossessed it reorganized it, and now they have their own fleets, which also contributes to security.
Yeah.
Because when it was being run by private hands, I mean, you cannot guarantee security.
Yeah.
Now there has been improvement in that. The governor has also substantially also embarked on broad-based and robust consultation with the different ethnic nationalities on the state, and that has promoted understanding between the people. Now, the issue of insecurity, why it still persists, is that the federal government has a major chunk of role to play. Now, back to the federal government. Well, I congratulate the president for spending 1 year in office. But if you ask me to assess his 1 year in office, I will only end up saying that I can only stand with the criticisms of the government I have been maintaining, because I seem not to have seen anything change. The government in the last 1 year had called on Nigerians, to sacrifice. And people like us were tempted to believe the president and adjusted our belts, gave him a benefit of doubt. We were disappointed that as we were adjusting, they were loosening their belts and living extravagant lifestyle lavishly. They were buying SUVs, 150 million for members of the National Assembly. They were spending 21 billion to build a house for one person. They were spending 9 billion to buy a presidential yacht for a president in Abuja, while there is no water except Jabi Lake. They were spending 4.8 billion to renovate the house of the president. So, if you sum up this together,
Subsidy on urge.
yes. Now, the subsidy regime management of the government was something we thought could have dealt with the withdrawal of subsidy. It ended up becoming the worst calamity. Nigerians were misled again to gather for just a few bags of rice and indomie. And you have 4,000-5,000 people gathered. People scrambled, and there were stampedes, and many people lost their lives in houses of members of the National Assembly across the country, especially the northern part of the country. So what do you now specifically take and say the government had done well? Except I will concede that the government has considerably done well in terms of propaganda, which is even more than Goebbels' propaganda machine of the Nazi Hitler.
Isn't that rather too extreme comparison, Comrade Minister, if you compare the propaganda machine of the government to that of Joseph Goebbels,
yes,
the notorious Joseph Goebbels
of
Nazi? I think that's rather extreme. But seriously speaking now, there's no doubt, there's massive pain across the land. But the counter narrative is that this is short-term pain for a glorious future. So are you saying we are not? It's not proper to give this government the benefit of the doubt?
You see, the body language of the government does not support what they are preaching. President Muhammadu Buhari was more honest in terms of calling for sacrifice.
You think so?
When he became president, he appointed only 36 ministers. And every minister was given 2 aides. He cut his salary and that of his vice by 50%. In the first 4 years, he never acquired any new vehicle. He used the vehicles he inherited. I've repeatedly stated that I never used government vehicle as a minister for 4 years. That it was sacrificed. So what we expect from the president, so that we can go around and mobilize Nigerians, that there is concrete evidence of sacrifice from the president, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. That is lacking. If you see the convoy of the ministers of this government, they are 50 in number. If you see their convoys, new SUV vehicles that were bought at about 150 million or more. So there are about 2 of them that are new in such convoys. So you have 300 million gone on one person, and you have about 50. If you look at how the president spends Nigerian money at this time. Does it suggest that we're suffering? 15 trillion on the coastal highway, Lagos-Calabar coastal highway. And 1.3 trillion was paid to upfront in complete disregard of procedure. Could the building of coastal highway be a priority at a time like this where Nigerians cannot afford to eat? Should it not be the priority of the government to invest more in food security, secure Nigerians, because there must be Nigerians before Nigeria? So the call for giving the government a benefit of doubt is misplaced, misconceived, incongruous. Where do we start? Oh, Nigerians, okay, the sacrifice you are calling for now is that Nigerians should all look for atapepia anywhere and take and die, so that it will be recorded that 210 million died because of sacrifice for Nigeria. And then we leave the occupants of Asokoro, Metama, and all the choice areas in Nigeria to live. I mean, we should be honest. Our people are dying. If you look at my phone, I shed tears every day. And I ask myself a question. Is this what we bargained for? Is this the reason why we got independence? People calling me and telling me 4 or 5 days they have not eaten. And from their voices, you could hear dying people talking to you. So is it because you can afford that you now ignore it? I mean, we are in a terrible mess, and the president needs to review his policies.
Comrade Minister, I mean, what you have just described is really harrowing. Let's pivot back to insecurity. A couple of days ago, if I'm not mistaken, we saw on TV the Comptroller General of the Nigerian Customs Service display an arrest they made, an impoundment they made of a truck conveying pump-action rifles, hundreds, if not thousands, with rounds of ammunition and all of that, valued at about 13.5 billion or something like that, seized at One Port in Rivers State, if I'm not mistaken. Comrade Minister, who would import such weaponry into Nigeria, and for what? That's the question. What was that? Because this was not the security forces importing such weapons. Who would import such armory, arms and ammunition into Nigeria, and for what?
Well, I think from that report, I also made up my mind.
Sorry to interrupt you, because let me give more context. Since 2019, the last suicide bombing happened in Nigeria. So we thought we had overcome suicide bombing and now dealing with just the low-hanging issues of banditry, terrorism, and all of, insurgency, kidnapping, and all of that. But then look at what happened over the weekend in Gwosa, in Borno State. Little young girls, married girls, young teenage, you could call them teenage girls, strapped IEDs on themselves, went into a wedding, went into crowded places in Gwosa, and, raped so many people. As at the last count, I think 32 people dead, several, injured. What's going on?
Well, from these developments you've analyzed, I come to the conclusion that the political elites, the political economic elites of this country had declared war on poor Nigerians.
How?
There is no any poor man that can afford to import that
such scale of,
yes, of arms. So the person who would have been responsible is a well-established businessman.
Sorry, sir. Under former CG of Customs, retired Colonel Ahmed Ali, I remember vividly this same scenario playing out, where you came on TV, they just arrested a truck, where they impounded, arms, and that was the last we heard. No, I cannot recall any arrest made, the people being prosecuted, I cannot recall. This one again, just a couple of days back, what is going on, comrade? Can we ever have peace in this country with this? Because when I saw that, guess what, Comrade Minister? You know more than myself. You've been in government. Nigerian police don't carry those kinds of weapons I saw. Those kinds of weapons, I only see them with the DSS. What's going on, Comrade Minister?
Well, if you start an investigation now, the criminals are sacred cows. They cannot be touched. That explains why even the first one, nothing happened. You will not hear anything about it. Because those behind these things are known. The political will to deal with it is what is lacking. They are intertwined within the network of the political elites. You see, the question may be, why are they doing what they are doing so that they cannot be held accountable? If the common people are allowed to organize themselves and move to the streets, they will hold everybody accountable. Because if you are not doing well in your village as a councillor, the local people will demonstrate and embarrass you. So that they don't have the stability, arms is imported into the country. People are armed, civilians are armed, so that they kept creating security challenges. People are dislocated from their ancestral homes. So where they are now, they don't even have any right. They are mere IDPs. Is it there that they will demonstrate? Are they going to demonstrate for food? So it's a deliberate conspiracy as far as I'm concerned. If it is not, I challenge the federal government of Nigeria to investigate just this recent one.
Yes.
To investigate.
And make it public.
Make public.
The findings.
The findings and prosecute for once. If the government does this one, let me assure you, I will enlist as the #1 supporter of this government. And I will work for the government. I will campaign and mobilize Nigerians.
Fantastic place to take a break. Take this short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Comrade Minister, open grazing has been a cause of crisis. You are well familiar with it in the Plateau, in Benue, those places usually called food baskets of our nation. How do we deal with this? Briefly.
The best way out of it is ranching. And ranching has cured this type of challenges in other established climes. Texas is a common example. What we are going through was what they went through. In fact, their clashes was even worse than ours. But it was cured by ranching. So I am an advocate of ranching.
Okay.
Let us ranch. But in doing this, the National Orientation Agency needs to embark on a robust awareness. Because what is lacking is information. People are not informed as to what ranching means. To them, it looks like grabbing their lands and giving it to other headers.
I was coming there. So when we say ranching now, how is the issue of the land? Because there are some parts of this country that when you talk about land, it's like you're putting your finger in their eyes. So, and I'm referring to, take the place of Southeast, for instance. And the counter argument is that when a typical, some other Nigerians go elsewhere in Nigeria, we all buy land for whatever businesses. So should the lands be given free to the Fulani herder for ranching, or they should pay? Quickly.
You see, when we talk about these Fulani herders, it's not only Fulani that are nomads in Nigeria. I am a nomad. I have cattle. And I even have cattle that are more than even a Fulani man. So when you talk about these herders, we should not limit it to an ethnic group. Government should acquire land and build ranches.
Fantastic. As it was done before,
yes,
anyway.
Because they will take over these grazing routes. So the grazing route that is taken from the herders is now compensated in ranching. And there were ranches in the northern Nigeria during Sadona. In Wase, the southern part of Plateau, we have Wase Ranch. We have Abudu cattle ranch.
Obudu,
So
yeah.
there were Obudu. So there were ranches.
Absolutely.
So it's not a strange concept. Let's go back to ranching so that we can deal with this situation.
Next point. There's this kite of restructuring. You know, every new National Assembly comes and says want to restore, you know, they want to do constitutional amendments. So a group of lawmakers in the House of Reps, about 50 of them, said, oh, they are returning Nigeria back to, they are coming up with a bill to return Nigeria to parliamentary system and all of that, you know. Let's go back to 8 regions, you know, devolve power and all of that. What do you say about this? What's your view?
God bless those who are advocating for parliamentary system. I'm an advocate too. Let me join them.
You support it?
Let's go back to 1963 Republican Constitution. That is the only constitution that was negotiated in Lancaster House by Nigerians and created the federation, which we had now altered. All the crisis we are into is as a result of betraying that agreement Nigerians had in Lancaster House in 1954. So let's revert back to what we Nigerians agreed upon so that we can now build a country that is accountable. With a parliamentary system, no prime minister will wake up and sign 90 billion for harsh intervention. It must go to the parliament.
Yeah.
It must be defended. If you lose, his government crumble. No prime minister will wake up and in the confine of his bedroom approve a contract of 15 trillion. It must go. So the system is more accountable than this presidential system that in our own claim here nurtured vested corruption. The powers vested in individuals, which is supposed to bring development, is vested into people that use it counterproductively to destroy the core values of democracy. So let's go back to what we agreed. Because I believe in 1963 Constitution because it was discussed and agreed by delegates of Nigeria.
And it works anyway. I mean, because if you look at the regions then in Nigeria, that was the golden era of this country. That was the golden era. I'm just lending credence to those proponents of that reversal to the parliamentary system of government. But as we round up now, comrade, there are movements in the north, you know, and I use the term north loosely now. You know, I've seen certain high-profile northerners, you know, moving about, not even clandestinely, you know, openly. You know, they are moving, they are meeting, you know, some of the pictures my producer is showing on the screen, you know, Malam Nasiru. And I know former Cardinal Governor Malam Nasiru, wherever you see him, you know, moving like that, and a few others, former Barrister Atiku Abubakar, they are moving. It was so obvious that comrade like yourself, Shehu Sani, came out to say the North, their move to unseat President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2027 would create chaos or something of the sort. Are you part of those moving?
Well, the movement in the North is supposed to, it's a warning shot to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Why?
Tinubu's style of administration.
What style is that?
He had not been too inclusive in his administration.
Why? How
The
do you say
North,
that?
which even gave him majority of the votes, he had now formed a government of a clique.
You called it cabal the last time you were here.
Yeah, I don't want to, because some are trying to give it ethnic coloration. No, this government is not Yoruba government. It's a government of the Yoruba, Imiloko Yorubas from Lagos. You must be baptized to be a Miloko before you can be appointed. So leave the Yorubas out of it. They're even crying like Nigerians. They were the first people to cry when he visited Lagos. But this move you are seeing is a warning shot. I have been advising the president that having won election with only 34%, open your hands and embrace Nigerians across the board and form a government that will give Nigerians sense of belonging. He had not hit to that. His cabal, which I had been saying that is a very sophisticated one, kept taking him to this direction. So what they are doing now is to tell him, well, if you think you will go this way, we're ready for you.
So this is not coming to you as a surprise. Is that what you're saying? This
long,
move.
It's long expected. I know the North very well. I know the North. You know what you see being reproduced here was started rightly by the clergies. the Islamic clergy started the campaign.
But, Comrade Minister, President Buhari was president for 8 solid years, unbroken. And this current president supported him. In fact, without President Tinubu's support, everybody knows that President Muhammad Buhari would not even have emerged president to begin with, least of all win second term. But my question is, and there is a general consensus that President Buhari's administration, sadly you were part of that, even though for just half of that period, brought this country to the point, the cul-de-sac where we are now, laid the foundation of the economic mess or quagmire we find ourselves. So is the North, just 1 year, are the North not rather being uncharitable or being unfair to the president?
No, President Tinubu is very, very unfair to the North. When Buhari won election at the first DC, Tinubu participated in forming the government. He produced ministers in that government and also strategic appointment.
You have facts to back that up?
Yes. Yes.
When he made that Emilokon declaration, he said he never asked him for anything. He never got any contracts. He said, I didn't ask him for beans. Mi otoro ewa, mi otoro gari. Meaning I didn't ask for beans. I didn't ask for gari. I didn't ask for anything.
Well, when a politician is on the restroom,
yes, he can say anything.
Yes, he can even say that God asked him to do it. So he brought people into government, which I am aware in the first district. In the second district, he also brought people into government. The former minister, the minister who took over from me, youth transport, was his PA.
I know.
Very good.
So
let me ask President Tinubu, how many ministers did Buhari produce in his government? He didn't give the old man even one person as PSA.
How do you know?
I'm speaking from informed position. I am very close with Buhari. One of the closest person with Buhari. He has treated the old man very unfairly. He formed a government without even giving him one single position. So Buhari himself is an injured person because he has treated him shabbily. So the government that destroyed Nigeria was a combined government of Tinubu and Buhari because they constituted the government.
That's a nice place to leave it. Comrade Minister, it's always a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much for that.
Nice having you again. And I'm sure when next we meet, we'll still have a lot of things. Nigeria is a lot of things happen every day in Nigeria.
Just always allow me to have my peace, but I will always be there for
you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
God
nice
bless you for what you are doing for Nigeria. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, that's the end of the interview segment. And like I always say before I round up, we need your support, to keep this program going in terms of sponsorship and advertisement. It costs a lot to run this kind of program, and we need your support to keep it going. Follow me on my various social media handles. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can watch this particular video. This episode, the full-length uncut version, will be on my YouTube and TikTok, so that you can watch it. And then drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Remember, like I always say, change requires action. Positive change requires positive action. I believe in a new Nigeria, and it is possible. Bye for now.